I'm Tessa Rickard, a nutritionist and foodie with a special interest in delicious, blood sugar regulating whole foods and helping women with Hashimoto's disease regain their sense of self and their energy. I know this topic confuses a lot of you because I get asked so often from clients with Hashis about dairy. Unfortunately, there is no black and white answer as usual. You've really got to experiment and discover for yourself what your body tolerates. I know we all love some cheese, but absolutely no food is worth damaging your health or exacerbating your autoimmunity for. So today I'm going to outline the best ways to do this, how to demystify dairy intolerance, because it's not just about the lactose, but I'll also be covering this topic in two parts so the video isn't too long. I don't believe that dairy is an unhealthy food. I mean, it's formed part of the traditional diets of many people for thousands of years, although of course it was usually raw and fermented. But if you have a disordered immune response like autoimmunity, and you've got inflammation and a breakdown in the integrity of your gut lining and function, then it's going to be very high on the list of foods that your body might not tolerate. Anything that stimulates the inflammatory cascade in the gut is going to be problematic, and regular supermarket cow's dairy products do seem to do that for the majority of my clients, I won't lie. So first, let's look at the red flags for dairy intolerance, or the symptoms, and the difference between casein and lactose. Plus, I want to look at some practical tips for understanding the difference between A1 and A2, the dose of dairy you might tolerate, and what steps to take if you do tolerate it. All right, red flags. So some common dairy intolerance symptoms include gastrointestinal distress, so, bloating, gas, nausea, urgent bowel motion, stomach cramps. Usually they'll occur within a few hours of consuming dairy, sometimes really fast. Reflux, burping, and upper GI symptoms are all really common too. Some individuals might experience more subtle symptoms like fatigue and headaches, and for some, a worsening of autoimmune inflammatory symptoms, so things like, the joint pain. Dairy intolerance can really affect your skin too. So acne, particularly that hormonal acne, eczema, and dermatitis can definitely be caused by dairy intolerance. So if you're experiencing these symptoms after dairy, or if you have an autoimmune disease, then you will want to do a bit of self-testing to evaluate dairy's effect on you. Don't worry, I will cover that as well in part 2. So let's discuss lactose intolerance first, because this is the one that everyone has heard of this. So lactose is the sugar in dairy. And when we can't break down lactose, it causes a lot of gas and brings a lot of water into the bowel, which is what causes that diarrhea. So generally, you'll know if you have it because within a short period of consuming dairy, think sort of half an hour or so, you'll get gassy, gurgly in the abdomen, and you may have urgent diarrhea. So if you're of Asian or African descent, you're really likely to be lactose intolerant because these populations tend to have lower levels of lactase, which is the enzyme needed to break down lactose. Lactose is super dose dependent, so you really need to find your own personal limit. You might be okay with a dash of milk and a cup of tea, but a latte will likely be too much for most. So low lactose dairy products include aged cheeses, yogurt, butter, ghee, kefir. Fermented dairy is generally tolerated better as the bacteria consumes the sugars. Butter and ghee are mostly the fat found in dairy, so they're quite low in lactose as well. High lactose products include milk, ice cream, cream, custard, cream cheese, and ricotta, the obvious ones. So let's explore casein intolerance. So this is by far the most common issue I witness in Hashimoto's clients with dairy. And this is because casein is the protein in milk, and it's more likely to trigger an inflammatory response in the gut. So I've talked about this before, but intestinal permeability, or otherwise known as leaky gut, means that larger protein molecules have direct access to your immune cells, which would normally be guarded by a healthy gut lining. So the result is that the immune system mistakenly identifies casein as a threat. That's a problem. So if you are casein intolerant, you'll find your symptoms are harder to pinpoint as it can cause a slower burn of inflammation rather than the obvious digestive dysfunction that lactose causes. And yes, it can definitely present as gut aches and gas too, but Hashimoto sufferers might also find it contributes to an unhealthy gut, which leads to a disordered immune response. and can consequently drive up antibodies, exacerbating autoimmunity. So, general autoimmune symptoms like brain fog and fatigue and body pain may worsen with a casein intolerance. So, for those navigating autoimmune disorders, while lactose is often blamed, casein may well be the culprit. It is possible to have both as well. It's important to note that lactose intolerance won't damage your gut, it's just really uncomfortable. On the other hand, if you continue to consume casein despite being intolerant to it, it will cause inflammation and can damage your gut and keep you in that cycle. The only low casein product really is ghee because it's pure dairy fat. So stay tuned for part 2 of Hashimoto's and dairy, where I discuss the A1 and A2 casein proteins, how to do an elimination diet to determine if and what type of dairy you might tolerate.